for me, it was like, well, that's not what the billionaires did. I got to figure out what they did, right? And that's how the journey started. I just started getting obsessive about books, in finance, sales, and other things that were going to get me there, because I also didn't have any money yet.
It's just funny. It's funny, the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how?
Come here, though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Are you ready?
Another day, my friend, just rocking it over here. West Coast, so I get started early, working that East Coast schedule.
Yeah, where are you at? Cali?
Vegas.
Oh, Vegas. Okay. We're getting those fun months where I'm dealing with it here in Florida, where it's it's the start. It's the start of something brutal. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're going on almost a record here of days in a row without hitting 100 degrees.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, because normally you guys are at 100 right now, right?
It's been super mild. I mean, we've had a bunch of rain in the past couple weeks too. Super weird.
That is weird. Yeah, because your rainy season is until like September, right?
I think so. I think it only rains like 20 days a year or something. I just moved here a month ago. So.
Oh, did you? Right on. What brought you out to Vegas? Work?
Lots of things. I mean, I had a physical business, family business that we were running, since I was born, right outside DC.
Mm-hmm.
And we sold that to a private equity firm, so I could kind of go wherever. And I checked out Florida, checked out Nevada, Texas. It was going to be a zero tax state, and I don't know. Vegas is just it's a unique place. You can be at your house in the hills looking at, the mountains, and then be 15 minutes from all the best restaurants in the world. There's no traffic, it's just a great place.
Yeah, Vegas is Vegas, man. Yeah. And Florida's up there too. I've been here for pretty much my whole life, and it's hard for me when people talk shit about Florida. It's like it's the best. Like I don't have any fucking complaints. When I lived in Orlando, it was brutal because it was Orlando, right? It's like living in LA. I mean, California is great, but if you're living in LA or San Fran or one of those places, it's like, ugh, what a shit show. But when you start going on the outskirts, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what it was like in DC. I can't do the big city with the hours of traffic anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So walk me through. So what do you do again? Because I looked through your profile. So I want to give people that haven't seen you, I'm going to link all your IG and your sites and stuff in the description below. But give us a quick little cliff notes of Justin.
Yeah, so Kearns Capital, we're a 506c hedge fund. We got a couple different funds. Well, really, we have the main fund, which is trading fund. We use algorithms, swing trading strategies, different partnerships to run all those strategies. And then we do SPVs, which are special purpose vehicles, and that's specifically for late stage private equity heading into pre-IPO season. So that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, man. And do you have a spot in Vegas, or you just do everything from home? No,
the hedge fund's based out of Boca in Florida. So
okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm the only one on the team that's out here
working remote.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, once I work remote, I've been, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years working from home, and it's going to be hard. You got to pay me a lot of money to go to any type of location now.
I'm not doing it.
It's just it's so much better. The quality of life is better, and I get more shit done. Like, I definitely work more than if I was to go to a physical office. But, when you factor in like the hours that you're not commuting, not only are you able to get more work done, but you think about your mental health, like just driving. If it's an hour round trip a day, 2-hour round trip a day, just that 2 hours is just such a strain on your mental health. It's like not even worth it to go to a location anymore. So hopefully a lot of companies.
I did direct sales in the car for 10 years, like driving 50,000 plus miles a year. The pandemic was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. Well, and to a lot of people too.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely, it wasn't for like a couple million, but everyone else, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Well, let's kind of talk a little bit about your expertise, because, for me, I talk a lot about, and we mentioned this before, but I talk a lot about mental, physical, and financial health. The most I've kind of dug into the topic, because I'm no expert on the financial side, is a little bit with, 401ks, Roths, IRAs, things like that, where I've had a couple experts discussing that type of thing, because it's fascinating to me generationally that everybody's different and everyone's raised different, of course. But there's one thing that a lot of people don't have that common sense of, and it's hard to get your money on track and to focus on saving money or investing the right way when we're kind of taught as an early age, even in school, when we're in middle school and elementary school, especially now, these poor kids, everything around us, if it's not, family or friends, like everything materialistic wise is so good now. Like everything is so awesome. Like there's not a lot of things that suck. And it's so hard, like as a child, I can't imagine like a teenager right now when you have every single person has a new iPhone. Every single person has a vlogging camera. Every single person you see is driving around in a new car and they got a nice house. And there's a lot of people out there that are very, very privileged, and they're carrying all this cool shit. It's hard not to get sucked into that world of, I want the cool shit. I want the Starbucks every day. I want, you know what I mean? So it's like, what do I do if I do have money, but everybody else around me is buying all this shit? I want this stuff because I'm watching TV commercials and I'm, I got the Jones effect going on. And
Yep.
I realized at a very early age to invest money and live below my means and keep my break even low. But that's few and far between. A lot of people that I talk to, even my close friends, took them, to their late 30s when they were forced to, save money because they accidentally had a kid. And they're like, oh shit, maybe I should look at my finances. But it's weird that a lot of Americans in particular kind of need that like kick in the ass, and that's why a lot of kids, end up being raised in not very positive households. The families end up getting divorced later on because they're not, there's some resentment in there. So there's a lot of snowballing effect that's fascinating to me about like training kids at an early age to save and invest and to understand this stuff versus like, how to dissect a frog. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So,
and I watched a bunch of your content around health and stuff like that. I had a health coaching company and we had an organic food delivery service. So I can
nice.
talk a lot about that stuff too, like the physical, the mental side of it. But yeah, I mean, like with what you just said, I mean, it's super depressing when I'm getting on an airplane and I'm sitting in first class and I watch all these people dripping in designer go into the back of the plane.
That's a great way of looking at it.
What are we doing, guys? Like social media is making you fake it. Like,
yeah,
it's a disease.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think is the root cause of that? Like how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
36.
Okay, so I just turned 38, so I think we're on the same wavelength. But
Yep.
it's funny because a lot of my parents in particular, and they told me, like in my 20s, like most, hey, don't do this, don't do that, don't. But now it's so difficult because it's way different now from a tech side of like everything that's happening. So I know it's harder. I'm not ignorant to the fact that I know it's tough when all your friends have cool shit and stuff. But I think we're smart enough now where, like as a society, I think we understand that all of this is just a waste of money. But
It's gotten polarized, right?
right.
You got tons of young kids that are killing it that have massive amounts of assets because they were focused, and then the other kids go the other direction. It's just gotten completely polarized, I think.
Yeah, and it's either like you're on one side or the other. Like like I talk to my friends because I've owned, rented, and sold. I'm in my fourth house now, but in 10 years. And when I first started in my early 20s picking up properties and stuff, everyone thought, my friends in particular were like, dude, what are you doing? You're missing the concert this weekend. And I'm like, dude, I got planned. And they laughed. They think it's hilarious. And then here we are a decade later, and now they're trying to catch up. And it's weird because we see it happen, right? Like our parents told us, take 10%, put in your savings account. But we never listen though. And like as a new father, I know I'm going to tell my babies that, hey, listen, do this, and they're going to do what they're going to do. I get it. But it's so weird. I don't know if it's an evolutionary thing, but we just like want to continue to get the new shit. And we want the new VR goggles, and we want to see like it's this very, addictive type of trigger that we have, I think.
It's so interesting, right? Like, and then when I talk to people like me who delayed the gratification, like stayed in the first house for 10 years, even when you made 7 figures, like
yeah.
the pain that I had was different. I never, like, the thing that made me so angry was having to look at the price on the menu when you go to dinner.
Mm.
Like, am I out enjoying myself? Do I have to pick between the steak and the chicken? Like, that just never sat well with me.
Mm.
And it just wasn't time to go to dinner.
Yeah.
Like that, internalized that, because I wanted to eliminate that pain. And you're going to live through pain, right? It's going to be, I'm getting the short-term fix, the dopamine hit. I went to Louis Vuitton. I'm going to go fake it at the club. And then I'm miserable all week figuring out how I'm going to pay the credit card bill. That's not happiness, right? So
It's wild.
I chose to suffer for a long period of time and do nothing but work and invest so that I could turn on the spigot at some point and live the way I want the rest of my life and not worry about money. It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do love that conversation too, because it's very similar to like working out, in my opinion. I relate those two things. It obviously takes a lot of discipline to save and invest and to know the long-term strategy of like having a good investment portfolio. And then you look at like working out, it's kind of the same thing, where that's kind of your investment portfolio you're building is, are you looking to have a 6-pack to go to the beach this summer? Or do you want to run around with your grandkids at 80? So that's kind of how I think of things, is like, I want to run around with my grandkids when I'm 80. So what do I got to do? Well, I can't work out when I'm 70. I have to work out for the next 30 years. And then if I do that and I take care of myself and I do everything, then I'm going to be able to do those type of things. But when you look at like older people now, their biggest regret is not spending enough time with their family and not being healthier. Those are the two biggest regrets. So if I can avoid one of those things by just lifting a little weights, taking care of my body, not eating like shit all the time, and I can live longer, like, oof, exciting. And then parallel to that, I can save money in my 20s and 30s. So that way I can retire at an early age and have money when I'm 50, 60 and travel the world. Okay. But yeah, you got to make that sacrifice, right? Like that's the hard part.
Yeah. And
so
living in extremes, right? Like I used to really live in extremes, like had to do 75 hard, like look like doing it for the 6-pack, right? Now it's like, that's just not sustainable. Even the guys who get on stage, they look like that for a week and then you're normal again. So now it's more of, I hate to use the word balance, because balance did not get me to where I am, but you're going to have to go through periods of time in your life where it's all in, and then it's okay to have balance. You got to, I feel like you got to earn the right to have the balance.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, you look at like these fitness studs that, like he's just coming to mind because I just saw Extraction 2, great movie, by the way. But Chris Hemsworth is a good example to where like he's, if you look at like previous photos and whether he was on gear or not, that's irrelevant. But the point is he worked his ass off in his 20s and, late 20s. But before that, he was a twig, compared to like his first role in Thor. He got jacked, he got shredded, and then now he's on the maintaining stage. And if you look at him right now, he's not in the best shape he was when he was Thor, because that takes a lot of discipline. But now he's in this maintaining stage, and when he's 40, 50, he's going to continue to maintain. And that's what you kind of have to do, is you got to work your ass off for a long period of time at an early stage and then be able to maintain it. And it's a lot easier to maintain it, as you get older versus trying to like get the results you want when you get older. That's where I have a lot of like family friends that are a little bit older, 40 and 50. And they always ask me like, hey, Tony, what can I do? What can I eat to do? And I go, make it 20 years ago. Rewind the clock 20 years ago and it's going to be a lot easier. But you can't. I mean, because once you're at a certain point, your metabolism drops, your testosterone's not as high. So unless you're going to get some TRT, I mean, there's not a lot you can do from a weight training perspective to gain a lot of muscle and burn a lot of fat. So it's like you got to do this shit at an early age. And it's interesting when you kind of put it in that perspective. And, some of these cats we're talking about, like Hemsworth, I mean, those guys have trainers 24/7, right? Working with them and training. So they don't have as much discipline as you think. They're having a lot of help. So it does take a very strong-minded individual to get where you need to be. And I would imagine, financially too, it's the same thing, right? Like when you first started getting some wealth, I mean, were you doing this thing on your own or did you get some help? Like what was your start journey, in your early 20s?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was obsessive learning, right? I mean, I looked at, because my parents were pretty middle class growing up. My dad, big entrepreneur, made a bunch of money, had some financial reversal. So I got to live through that as a child, which was a huge benefit to me as an adult, right? Most people have to learn these hard lessons as an adult. You get to learn them as a child. It's to me a huge head start. So I just knew from watching my grandparents and my parents, even to this day, that the traditional model of saving, whether it was, 403b, 401k, any of these government-sponsored vehicles, you end up at the end accumulating money that you cannot use for your entire life when you have a working body, when you can go do things, right? You can't even touch your money. And then once you hit retirement and you turn on the spigot, now you're living in a constant state of perpetual fear of how much can I draw down until the end, right? It's a formula for fear and scarcity the whole way from the time you start working till the time you die. So for me, it was like, well, that's not what the billionaires did. I got to figure out what they did, right?
Right.
And that's how the journey started. I just started getting obsessive about books, in finance and sales and other things that were going to get me there, because I also didn't have any money yet. So in a weird way, I did what the opposite of what most entrepreneurs do. They learn how to get really good at business. They make a bunch of money, and then they know nothing about investing when they get the money, and they usually lose it, right?
Right.
Everybody knows somebody that lost all their money.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too common a thing, right? So I just front loaded that work. The whole time I was, building my career, I was acting as if I already had millions of dollars and what am I going to do with it, right? And that's when I learned to throw out most of the financial books that you're going to read, because most of them are going to be like, you can't beat the index, dollar cost average, like Tony Robbins, Money Master of the Game, like one of the most popular money books in the world. I read it, I threw it in the trash.
Yeah.
Like if it doesn't get you to where you want to go, you got to reject it.
Yeah.
Keep seeking.
Yeah, exactly. And, I would imagine there's no right formula, because, a lot of people say, I got buddies of mine that make six figures and, they're not happy. And then I got guys that, make $100,000 a year and have a couple kids and they're super happy and they're very content and, they don't need a lot. They don't have a lot of drive to get there. But it's like, what is your level of success? Like what, I was listening to a quote, I think it was from a podcast. I forget who it was from though. It's going to kill me. I know I'm going to think of it the second this podcast gets done. But he said, once you get to that finish line, once you get to the point of your success, like if you were to write down a sentence of what your success is, okay, fast forward, let's say 20 years, you reach that. Congratulations, you're 60. Now what? And that's what a lot of people do, right? When they have all that money, is they get to that certain point where they think that was the line, that was the succeed line. And they get there and they're like, oh shit, now what? And they don't know what to do with their money. Like you were saying, they don't know what to do with to invest. So it's almost better to have that investment plan early. Like you say, do your research, do what you got to do to, learn the grassroots of that. And then work however you got to get there to make that money. And then you'll know what to do with it to stretch that out, whether it's through, a Roth or it is 401k, whatever it is, but learn how to stretch that money as you're getting it. Because a lot of people, I think, just want to drink margaritas on the beach and retire. Okay, that's great. Then
it
what?
lasts a month. I just did
Right.
it. Trust me. It lasts a month. And then you're like, I got to get working again.
Yeah, now what? Like, what do we do? So, well, I mean, what would you tell people if they're in their mid-20s, they got a decent job, they don't have any idea where to start, where to invest, or, how to earn passive income or, retire by the time they're 70? Like, what do you think is some pillars that they could focus on?
I think the first thing is just your structure, right? What type of investor do I want to be? The way I looked at it is money's all wrong, right? let's think about the way that we spend money, right? Like your bills hit monthly, right? Or bi-weekly, whatever it is. Every 30 days, you got expenses, right? The credit card bills every month, your mortgage is monthly. So if all your expenses are monthly, wouldn't it make sense to invest in things that pay you monthly?
It would.
Right. So for me, the number one principle is in the beginning, I decided I wasn't going to be a growth nest egg investor. I was going to be a cash flow investor. In other words, if the investment doesn't pay me today, tomorrow, and in the future, I'm not interested because I need my bills paid today.
Right.
And we are all one tragedy away from losing our active income.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them, but
Dude. Yeah.
it's way too close to home. I mean, it just happened in my family. I'm watching it firsthand, and you know, I speak in a room full of people. I'm like, how many of you know somebody that's gotten cancer, somebody that died in a car accident, right? It's like, if you lost your active income today, how long is your family going to be okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way I look at it in terms of, because that's the mental shift you have to have, or you're just going to go spend it on BS. And then like when you get it, if like, let's say something happens to your mom and she's on a single income and you got to pay her hospital bills or her mortgage, or she's on the street and you're walking around, you know, with a $20,000 watch or something, how are you going to feel about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know and that's the scary thing that people don't think about, you know, and plan for, because, you know, newsflash, every day there's going to be something awesome that you want to buy. There just is. That's not going to stop. Here's some breaking news on the Broader Podcast. Everything that comes out from today for the rest of your life is going to continue to get better and better, and you're going to want it all. But you have to think, do I want that shit that's just materialistic stuff that I'm not going to use, or do I want to be able to take care of my family and take care of myself? And I had a couple scares myself. I don't want to bore my listeners because I've talked about it, you know, ad nauseum, but I had a lung tumor in my lung last year, and I had to get that surgically removed. Thank goodness it wasn't cancerous, but they had to remove a third of my lung, and it was some of the worst pain and worst recovery of my life. And then during that time, my father-in-law, my wife's father, passed away literally the day that I got discharged. And this whole time, we've also been trying to have a child, but it's been non-existent, and we've done like IUIs and IVF and all this stuff. So if that wasn't enough, not only are we wasting all this money on IUIs and trying to, you know, have a kid, but then I got laid off when I got out of the hospital from my job, making well over 6 figures. And so to get rid of that income and also have all this stuff to happen, to say the least, it was one of the worst years of our life. But, you know, I talk about this a lot because the only reason we were able to survive is because I saved for 10 years. And I was in real estate, and I had property that I eventually sold just because it made sense because of the market. Thank goodness I did, because now we're starting to drop a little bit. But, you know, so I sold at its peak, so that helped. But if I didn't do all that stuff in my 20s, we would literally be on the street. We'd be fucked. So people don't think, like you said, it's going to happen to them, but not only did all that stuff happen to me, but it happened like back to back to back to back. Like if it didn't happen back to back, it wouldn't be as bad. But thank goodness that we were secure in ourselves. And, you know, props to my wife for continuing her job and working hard and doing all that. But you don't think about that stuff. But when I got involved into real estate, when I got involved into investing and saving money, that's the only thing I thought about when I was in my 20s. Once I got done partying and Tinder and all that bullshit, once I got done with that for like, you know, half a decade, because that's enough on Tinder. But once you like 4 or 5 years, you're good. And once I did that, I'm like, all right, I need to fucking save money for my future wife and future kid. I don't know who it is yet, but I know I'm going to need money, because if I want a nice girl, a nice classy broad, not on Tinder, I need to make sure I have some disposable income, and I need to make sure I have my shit together, and I need to have a plan. So I put together a 5-year plan, then a 10-year plan, and that's that. So, but you know, a lot of people don't think like that, especially nowadays.
Nope.
It's so weird.
It's a balance, though.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm not impressed with someone who saves everything and never enjoys their life and dies with a monster nest egg. That's not cool either. But I also, have a lot of people in my life that are like, I could die tomorrow. I'm spending it today. I'm not worried about the future. That's not a recipe either. So it's somewhere in the middle of all that. Like, you have to enjoy it now, but you have to be responsible for the future at the same time.
For sure. And, not only that, but it's also like one of those things where if you do want to have a partner too, you want to make sure you're set up with them as well. Because
it's the most important decision you'll ever make.
Yeah. I mean, are you married? You got a girl?
Yep. Married.
Hey, congrats. How long?
Married for coming up on 4 years, but we've been together for 10. And that's a huge detail to this conversation. I mean, we were broke when we met, both of us, negative net worths, right?
Wow.
And part of us getting together was removing ourselves from those networks and the early 20s, just bad decision networks we were in. And we decided to move ourselves to a new place and start a life together with these goals of getting rid of that and actually building a life, right? So, I mean, there's so many spouses are the number one killer of dreams. There's just no question. Like, you have to be on the same page and be a team. If you're not a team, how much harder is it going to be? It's already going to be really hard. You have to have a team member with you.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. Yeah, because not having that right support system, not only is going to like crush your dreams, but if they're not supportive, there's going to be resentment down the road. And then, that's why you look at a lot of couples that end up getting divorced after 4, 5, 6 years is because the other person was held back from doing really what they want to do. And, you got to experiment. You got to experiment early in that relationship and be honest with each other and just tell each other, hey, listen, this is what I want to do. Oh, yeah, this is what I want to do. All right, how can we make both those things happen? And if we can't, then let's set up goals to make sure that maybe I do mine, then you do yours, and we'll figure out a plan and a structure. But, yeah, the fact that people just kind of go through life like, I'll figure it out. It's like, that is terrifying to me. Like, I'm just not, it works for some people. That does not work for me. It is just, my wife sometimes makes fun of me because I think so far ahead. Even she wants to hang out with some friends later today after I do this call with you. And she's like, hey, yeah, let's drive. And I'm like, all right, where are we going? And they're like, they want to go to St. Pete, which is like an hour and a half from us. And I'm like, all right, well, let's see. It's a 3-hour round trip. So then either we have dinner there, we have dinner when we get back, and then how much are we going to spend there? And then, okay. So I'm doing the math in my head of like already leaving. Because I'm like, how much do I need to do when I get back? Like, I got to deal with all that stuff. And she's like, can you just chill the fuck out and not worry about it? I was like, no, that's not me. I can't. I got to think far ahead. I think, weeks, days, months ahead. So that's just how I am. Yeah. I'll try to be spontaneous every now and then, but yeah, it's every now and then.
It's tough. I'm go with the flow, but very calculated.
Correct. Yeah. And if I am very go with the flow, I probably just calculated it already. And then I laid out a couple situations and then I just kind of persuaded them to pick my decision. Just made it their own. I do that with my wife all the time. I give her 2 options.
Everything's about flows, right? It's like I know what the income is per day. So it's like, this is what we've allotted for today. Like, that's it.
This is our break even. We can't go over it.
Yep. And you store it up for a couple days leading up or whatever. Like, everything's planned. Like, and if you don't have a plan, something bad's got a plan for you instead.
Dude, for sure. And, sometimes, and this is an important note too for people listening, that even though you make a plan, it's not always going to go your way. But again, if something doesn't go your way, I usually have a plan for that as well. And that's kind of the difference between, and a lot of women I feel like don't understand this. I can't speak for all relationships, but I know if like I'm a man in a woman relationship and I have a woman, she never understands my thought process when it comes to like, guys and girls are very emotional in different ways. Guys, I feel like, are more emotional to where like I close my eyes, I try to go to sleep, and all I could think about is like, am I going to grab my gun because someone's going to pop through the door? Like that's where my mind goes, right? I'm always thinking and planning worst case scenario. The ladies like, what am I going to get at Starbucks tomorrow? Like that's how I feel. Their thought, like they're very like, some of them are planned and calculated, but most of the time they're not stressing out and worrying so much about like what's going to happen later on. We're a species, men in particular, we're like a species of like worst case scenario, I feel like, where I'm always thinking like worst case scenario. So I have to plan for it. You know, I got to plan for the apocalypse. I got to plan for this. I got to plan for that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Or just not staying in the feeling. Like we're always trying to be solution oriented instead of like, this is happening, you know?
Right. Impression spot on. This is happening. Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, are you finding that like in your relationship, I mean, does your wife do your same line of work?
No, totally
she-
different.
Okay.
But this is, you know, different phases of life. Things are going to change, right? In the beginning, it was, hey, we're broke. We don't want to be broke. All hands on deck until we get to X, right?
Right.
Buying the first property, not spending any money, you know, doing it again, and then getting to a point where you have the big hockey stick breakthrough, you could say. And then it's like, hey, you know what? If you don't want to work anymore, you don't have to.
That's
you know,
beautiful.
so
Setting up a goal. Yeah.
different phases are going to require different parts of you. And then it's like, you know, you get to these hockey stick moments in your life and it's hard to turn it off, right? And then you got to get real with yourself and be like, okay, am I ever going to enjoy this a little bit? And as long as you're doing it responsibly, I just see a lot of people that just can be too successful, you know? It's
Yeah.
I was that person that's so obsessive. I mean, I would go months without taking a day off. I mean, months. Because for me, it was, I got to get here first and then I'll take a day off. It wasn't like I need a break from my life every weekend. That just never made sense to me.
Yeah. Especially if you love what you're doing.
Even if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't love what I was doing for 10 years.
And
I did it anyways.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to love it in the beginning. You're going to do what's necessary so that eventually you can go do whatever it is that you love to do.
Yeah.
If you do what you love off the beginning and it doesn't make any money, like you'll be broke and miserable, but doing what you love for the rest of your life, I don't know if that's a solution either.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a weird thing a lot of people, like a lot of these quote unquote gurus talk about, where they're like, it's okay, just, you know, go live with your parents and do what you want to do. You'll be happy. Will you? I don't know. Maybe you will. You know, if you're doing what you love and but you know, I always go back to like even doing what you love and you're working for someone else, in an instant that could be shut off.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you're a photographer and you work in a photography studio and you love doing it and you get paid 30, 40, 50 grand and you're excited and you're, you know, living below your means and life is good and you have no complaint, that studio could lay you off tomorrow. And then now what are you going to do? Right. Like, I think those gurus talk a good game when you work for yourself and do what you love. Maybe that makes more sense. You know, so if you are a photographer and you love being a photographer, instead of working for a studio, just be a freelancer, work for yourself. Because now you're in charge of your income. You're not going to fire yourself, right? And it might be a little bit more stressful, but at least you'll be able to do what you love and you have control over it a little bit more versus putting, you know, all your eggs in one basket.
Or realize that you have the capacity to do both in the beginning.
Ooh, elaborate
That's
on
what
that,
I did.
Justin. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like all these people are like, I got my 9 to 5. I'm thinking about leaving and starting my own thing. Like, why do you think that you've earned the right to get rid of your W-2 and go start something? You didn't save any money. You don't have any capital to go do it. You're going to crash and burn and need to get a job again. Like, there's going to be these periods of your life where all you're going to do is work. Like, if you want to break out of obscurity. So, no, you keep the W-2. You freelance on the weekend or at night after work. You don't need friends. Friends are not going to give you money, but the work you're going to do is. You really like your friends, you really care about them, say, hey, you know what? I'll see you in 24 to 36 months and I'm paying for dinner.
Big. But Justin, that's so much work. Oh my goodness. That's what people, that's what I did, man. Like I currently own 3 companies. One is my content business that I own, that obviously I do the podcast, but I also am a podcast coach and I create content for a lot of brands. And then me and my wife own a company a date night subscription box company. So we own that. And I was able to kind of do that once I got laid off that original time because I had the savings, because I had the capital, and I worked hard to do it. But now I always live by the rule of, okay, so this is what I made when I had the W-2, this is my break even, this is what I need to make. And I work until I get to that point. And then once I get to that point and, we make our nut for the month, then I know that any extra work I do, that's going to go into savings, and we could do vacations, or we could buy things for the baby. Like we could do this and that. But, I'm a freak when it comes to working. So I know I'm able to do that type of stuff. So a lot of people, when they ask me, because I've been able to do it for a year now and we're completely fine with the baby on the way. But if I let off the pedal, even for a second, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. We wouldn't be fortunate enough. So it's like you have to make that distinction. If you do have that W-2 and you are working 9 to 5, you work a little bit extra, like I did. I've had this podcast for 4 years now, and I was doing it on the side, making $0 for 3 years of it. Now I'm able to make some money off it, but yeah, for 3 years it was 6 p.m. every single day. It was on the weekends. I was editing, and my wife at the time, she was my fiance. She's like, "You're always on the laptop. What are you doing?" I'm like, because if I want to make a living out of this, I got to fucking commit to it. So
yeah, and you didn't say, I'm going to try this for 60 days or 90 days. Like, you don't put expiration dates on your goals because you don't know when you're going to hit them.
That's right. Yeah, I think if we all knew what that would be, it would kind of take the fun out of it.
Well, everybody would do it.
Everyone would do it.
That's the blind faith component, why nobody can dive in and stick with it.
Yeah.
Like, they tell you up front when you get a job how much you're going to get every week. People can buy into that. When you go into any of this stuff, paying for a mastermind where you might meet the person who's going to help you go to $1 million, or, your next business partner or whatever, but you can't spend a couple $1,000 on that because, like, what am I going to get out of it? What's the ROI? That's the whole point. That's where the gold is. You don't get to know in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the key, right? I mean, it's true what they say. If you want to make money, you got to spend money. And sometimes I look at like spending money also as time, right? Time is money. So you got to spend some time if you want to make the money too. So it's that sacrifice that you're going to have to make, whether it's, financially you're making the sacrifice or time-wise. I mean, if you want to make the money, you got to put in the time and the effort and the hours. And it's got to be a little bit extra than what you're normally doing. Especially, there was a great quote that a very successful buddy of mine told me. Had him on the podcast before, and he goes, listen, man, success is not what you're doing now. Success is what you're doing extra. And I go, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, if you're working 9 to 5 and you're making X amount of dollars a year and you don't find that to be successful, you can't keep working that job and expect more. You have to do more on top of that. And that's how you're going to be successful. You got to put in that little extra. You can't rely on that company to give you a promotion every year and give you that 5% raise that they promise you. Like, that doesn't exist. You being the best employee in that corporation doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make the most money. In fact, contrary to popular belief, you're probably not going to advance at all. Either you're going to die there, or you're going to have to leave, or you're going to get fired. But doing the same thing every single day, that's the definition of insanity, right? Is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And a lot of people go through life working their normal job, expecting that they're going to make more and be more successful at that job. You have to do that job and a little bit extra, right? Like if you're a lawyer and you're supposed to work X amount of hours, you got to put in a little extra hours if you want to make it to partner. Like you got to put a little bit extra. You got to do a little bit more, and then you'll be successful. But that word scares people because that takes away from Netflix time too, right? Like that's...
Yeah, but that's the thing is like people say they want these things, they want to do it. No, you don't. You don't. Like you're just lying to yourself every day. If you really wanted to do it, you would get serious about it. You would at least ask someone that's more successful than you for a little bit of guidance and help. Like that's how I know when someone's serious. They're like, oh, I want to do this and that. And I'm standing right in front of them. I'm like, what do you want to know? They don't even ask.
Ask me. They don't even know what to ask.
Yeah, because they like the idea of it. They're not really invested in it. You can tell the difference. Someone who's had enough pain to take action. Most of the people are just not there yet, and it's so easy and comfortable to just take the paycheck show up every week. It's okay, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's comfortable. It's safe. Yeah, it is.
It's safe if you don't have aspirations. To me, I had to go down this painful road of figuring it out, because to me, the risk was not giving myself a chance to have the life I wanted.
Yeah.
I'd be risking everything up front.
Yeah. Fascinating. And then, so again, we go back to, all right, so if people are looking to make some sort of change, where would you say they begin? Like, what should they do if they had a little bit of capital? What's the next step for them?
Yeah, so I think understanding the two worlds of investing. So you've got, the public markets, everything that you're allowed to invest in. The public can do 401ks. You can get a brokerage account.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy a house, but what you can't do is invest in accredited investments only, like private placements, 506Cs.
Mm-hmm.
The SEC has a barrier to entry to where the real investments are.
Mm.
So in the beginning, what I tell people is, because the SEC defines an accredited investor, if it's an individual, you got to have $200,000 of gross income in the previous 2 years. If you're married, it's $300,000.
Mm.
The other way you can be accredited is to have $1 million net worth, excluding your primary residence.
Mm.
If you do not check one of those boxes, in my opinion, it is not time to invest yet.
Mm.
Cash only. And then invest in yourself, books, mentorship, masterminds, marketing for your business. If you're not making $300,000, you don't have any money to invest. Right? So invest in yourself 1,000% until you become accredited,
Mm-hmm.
and you got at least $100,000. Because the stuff that we're doing, all the big guys, real estate syndicators, the minimum investment's $100,000.
Yeah.
So you got to invest in yourself and become the person that can be an investor first.
And I mean, the hardest part about what you're saying is exactly that, which is getting the capital, getting that $100,000. And a lot of people don't think it's feasible. It is, though. It is if you really power down. I mean, I decided to go the real estate way, which I probably would have done more knowing that what I know now. Of course, we always say that, right? Like, even as we go to it, is like, my dad told me not to drink alcohol, and I, of course, wasted 10 years of my life doing it. But it's fun. But it's like, oh, I wish I knew. But I really do, though. I wish I bought 5 houses instead of 3. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I bought more money in stocks at an early age when I knew I should have pulled the trigger. Like, there's different ways that you could do it. And then also, too, you got to have that long-term plan and just understand you're putting money into one thing and you just can't touch it for a little bit. Like, to put it in perspective, I mean, just one house that I sold last year, I already made over $100K. And that's the difference, is like, you buy it low, just as you would with most things. And if you don't want to fix it up and remodel, then you got to figure out a way. Maybe I need to wait this out and see if it's going to sell. Or you can invest time and energy into flipping houses. But what I love most about real estate, maybe not necessarily right now, I'd love to get your opinion on this, but I know when I bought my first house was $170,000 or $160,000. And it was a beautiful 3-2 in a nice part of Orlando. And that same house today would go for $500,000. Right. So that was less than 10 years ago. What's fascinating, which people don't understand about real estate, same thing with stocks. It's never been to a point in our history where it goes backwards. So like houses when I was a kid, when you were a kid, like my dad got his house for $30,000. Now their interest rates for 18%.
Right.
But the house itself was 30, 50 grand. So think about that. That was 30, 40 years ago. Now there are $500,000 for that same house. So if you invest into real estate, just like a lot of other things, there's never going to be a moment where it goes backwards. You just have to wait it out. That's the key. What I've seen in investing that I've done is you just got to wait it out. You can't look for the quick nut. You got to have that long that patience for it.
Yeah,
And that is the hardest part.
You're getting into the concept of slow money, fast money.
Right.
I believe you need a combination of both.
Yeah.
Right. So, I've got a lot of money tied up in big commercial multifamily projects. It's over 1,600 units across 5 states. I know that money's locked up for 5 to 10 years.
Right.
Locked. Very long-term play. Do I get cash flow in the short term? Yes. Like very first principle. If it doesn't pay me every month, every quarter, to me, it doesn't fit my investment profile.
Right.
That changes as you get further along, but it'll still, like anything that's like we just did an SPV for a private company called Flexport, $6 billion company that's going public in the next 12 to 24 months, right? So I put some money in that deal. I would not do that if I was in the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Because
then you can start to do stuff like that, like private equity plays, things that are more aggressive. If you want to invest in startups, that's not my thing. It's too risky. But take care of your slow money first. Like you got to have, until your monthly cash flow meets like your need, like what your W-2 is, or at least your basic expenses, I wouldn't invest in anything else. You need to free yourself from the rat race and the stress of your active income before you start doing aggressive plays.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to making income, whatever you do for your job, the easiest way to make more money, in my opinion, what I've seen is stop spending it. Right? That's the easiest way, like from a short-term perspective. Like if you're in your 20s, like everything you're talking about makes sense to me. But if you're in your 20s listening to this, you got $1,000 in your bank account, you would have $3,000 if you just spent less money. And then if you
gotta cut, you gotta cut in the beginning, depending on where you are, but also understand that you cannot cut your expenses enough to get wealthy. So
that's true. That's true.
Cut, stay, and don't. I think the biggest key is like when you have your baseline, like if you live in an apartment, let's say it's $1,500 a month, you got a $500 car payment. If you're at $2,000 a month overhead, cool, right? Don't worry about like. Because like if you cut the car payment to $250, like $250 is $250. Right. You need to learn how to double your income and then double your income again. And while you're doubling, don't move the baseline. Yeah. The longer you do that, the more separation you'll have from society. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And cutting off that faucet of everyone else listening or everyone else talking. If you can cut off that faucet of everybody else around you talking shit, and just not listen to that drip of every single person just telling you what to do and what not to do. I love what you said is invest in yourself, focus on yourself, do your own research, try not to listen to those outside influencers, especially the people that aren't good at the things you want to be good at. Like my favorite thing, I love when people say, especially that we got a kid on the way, and they're always trying to give us advice. But then I see them at the park with their kid, and I'm like, I'm not fucking listening to this person. What an asshole this person. Like they're the worst parent I've ever seen. It's the same people that you want to give you relationship advice that have had, 2 divorces. It's like, what are you doing telling me what to do? Yeah. But that's the thing. If you want to make a lot of money, you probably shouldn't listen to the guy that works at Starbucks. You know what I mean? Like he's probably not what you want to listen to. But
it's just amazing. It's amazing how many dreams and opportunities are killed by people in your life. I've seen it a million times. It's happened to me where I've had to check myself. Like, oh man, I almost didn't make that decision because someone around me said it was a bad idea, but they had never done it before. So why?
Yeah, that's so true.
Because when in the beginning, you're going to have so much doubt, right? You're going to feel like you're not worth it. And every successful person felt this way, by the way, right?
For sure.
We all felt inadequate. And guess what? You still do. Like the rooms I go into now, I feel completely inadequate to some of these people that are doing way bigger things than me, right? It's never going to go away. But in the beginning, you haven't calloused yourself to deal with it. Proximity is everything. So the biggest hack I've seen to get rid of this and to overcome it, it's going to be very difficult for you to break out of your networks, to tell your friends that you live near, like, I'm not going out this Friday, or I'm not going on whatever. The easiest way to handle this is you're going to know at these certain break points in your life where you see yourself, you're out living the network that you're in, you've outgrown them all, you got to move to a new city. like get out of town, because you'll create the separation that's needed and it won't be painful. You probably don't have it in you to tell your best friend from college, hey, like, I'm going somewhere you're not. Like, we can't really hang out every weekend anymore. But
So
you
true.
can move to a different city and see them a couple times a year.
Yeah. That's so true, man. That's great advice. That's the advice that I was given a long time ago. And we went from Orlando to Tampa. I moved because of a job. But man, the second I moved away from all my high school and college friends, almost within an instant, I became more successful. And that's not a dock on them, because they're still my greatest friends. And I see them every time I go to Orlando, and they're the best, and I love them. But at the time, it wasn't right for me, especially when I wanted to start a family, to hang out, and do what they wanted to do, right? So you kind of have to. I love the idea of separating from city to city, because it's almost like it made me feel a little bit better too, not just by doing that, but when I did visit them, it was exactly how it sounded, where I've never seen them before. Like, I showed up, I gave him the biggest hug and the kiss, and I was like, "You motherfucker, I missed you, man." Like, it was we had more love in those short moments, because I'm like, I'm not going to see this person for another 6 months, 8 months. And you appreciate friends a lot more versus like hanging out with them every single Friday, and you get into these scuffs, and those aren't your real friends, in my opinion, long term anyway. The ones that I could see once every 3-4 years, these are people that I would take a bullet for, because it's a stronger relationship. It's very hard to explain unless you're in that situation, but it's fascinating when you do get away and see that come to fruition.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know a lot of people that are ahead of me that are way more hardcore on this, and I've really, really taken this in, because I'm naturally like, I'm the guy that like, I just want everybody to like me, but very difficult to be like, just boundaries, right? I'm not good at that, and that's why you got to know yourself. That's why the hack for me is like, when I hit that barrier, it's like, okay, time to move, because I just know myself, But I mean, there is a concept though that I've seen amongst the ultra successful, and I've really embodied this. Like, some of them are like, there's no exception to this. Like, if you're not focused on creating wealth, you can't be in my life. Like, that's how most of them are. Oof. For me, it's, you can't be in my daily life. I'm not getting rid of you completely, but the people that I'm on the phone with all day long, we're trying to make moves. We're trying to build wealth. We have a common interest. Like, and the other thing about people like this, they're never going to say, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a month or two. Where you been? You never call to check up on me.
Yeah.
You never bring me any deals.
What are you doing for me lately?" Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, look, I mean, you're going to leave people behind. Like, there's just no way. If they're taking their, like, to your point, their 5% raise, and you're trying to double your income every year, it's going to cause some issues.
Yeah.
Going to be some jealousy. There's going to be some, I don't get it. You never hang out anymore, all this kind of stuff. And you're going to have to be strong and understand that it's going to be lonely on the way, but it's not lonely at the top at all.
No, that's a great way of putting it. Well, beautiful, man. I can't believe we're at an hour already. I don't want to take too much of your time. But yeah, we could talk about this for days, man. But here's what I do want to do. So again, I'll link your Instagram and your page and everything like that. But give us a shout out where people could find you, what you got going on. You say you're speaking. Is that just through work up in Vegas? You speaking some rooms, or just?
Yeah, it's different masterminds. The next one I'm doing is down in Puerto Rico in August with Sean Crane. He's doing a mastermind down there. I'll be speaking at it. If you're interested in it, shoot me a DM. I can give you all the info for that mastermind. But yeah, nice. It's Kearns Capital. That's our hedge fund. Kearns.capital is the website. There's no .com on the back of that, just Kearns.capital.
Nice.
And yeah, you can find me all over the socials. Instagram is my favorite, so it's Justin Freishtat. Tough last name. I'm thinking about changing it, but it's Freishtat.
I wasn't even going to try earlier. I was going to introduce you last name. I was just going to stick with Justin. It's a great name, though. It's a great name.
Yeah, I guess. It's not very marketable, though.
No, you'd have to go with a Smith or a Chase or like Justin Chase. It's kind of dope.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Or I'm going to bring out my nerd. Your last name should be Credible. Justin Credible.
Wow. Now I got it. This guy.
Trademark. No, but this was great, man. Thank you for all the knowledge you dropped. And yeah, it's interesting to see. I definitely consumed your content. I'm going to keep looking into that and all your masterminds, man. And just keep doing what you're doing, man. It's cool to see everything that you're up to. And I'm sure you're going to have years and years of success. So congrats on everything.
Thanks so much. Same to you. Been enjoying your stuff. And yeah, next time out in Florida, maybe we'll link up.
Hell yeah, man. Let's do it. You're the man, Justin. Well, good talking with you, man. And keep doing what you're doing, bro.
Thanks. You too. Talk to you soon.
Oh, hey there. First of all, thanks for making it to the end of this video. Not a lot of people do, according to the YouTube analytics. But I do want to say thanks for listening to this. There's some more episodes if you want to check those out, and they're all just as good. But if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out those timestamps below to reference some of the topics I talked about, as well as some discount links to some of our sponsors and affiliates. But thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.